Hey guys, it's Henry, and in this video, I want to talk about my journey to becoming a millionaire, option trading, my entire journey here, what it took to work at Goldman Sachs, to actually get a job in finance, how I really struggled. I want to go through a lot of my tough times, really show you how you can persevere as I did basically from a super disadvantaged background. I mean, I really had nothing, and now I'm in a really stable place. I'm able to travel a lot, and I want to show you how to actually build a portfolio and the tough times that it does take to actually growing your wealth. So my parents came from the Soviet Union, and I was born in Philadelphia. It was a really tough time for my parents, and for the first 5 years, actually, they didn't really know any English, and they had to do manual labor jobs like mopping the floors and washing the dishes. Honestly, I think a lot of other people are in similar positions, and if you're in a little bit of a better position, then I think you can achieve even more than I did. Growing my portfolio and being in a very stable place financially really took me about 9 years. This is my 9th year. It took me 1 year, less than a decade, and I want to share this important journey that I've had in the past 9 years with you. So honestly, there was a lot of tough times growing up. I didn't really have games, and really my parents didn't want to pay for air conditioning. So when I would sleep at night, it would be so hot. I would just wake up and there would be like a pool of sweat there in my bed. So it was really uncomfortable. And honestly, we didn't even have that much food. I would typically eat like eggs, bread, butter, and milk. And that was kind of it. That was basically my diet growing up because my parents didn't have a stable job. But I was really fortunate. I worked really hard in school. I wasn't always the best student, but when I started to realize that it is really important to get an education, then I took school very seriously. I went to Drexel University, and that's where I studied finance. Well, sort of. Initially, I studied biomedical engineering. I wanted to be a doctor because I really like helping people. I really love working with people hands-on. And my dad enjoys to play tennis, as do I, and he has some knee problems. So I was just thinking, what if I could cure this knee problem? And I had these like rosy dreams that maybe I can cure all types of diseases and all types of ailments in the world. So I wanted to be a doctor. Then I quickly realized that finance and business was more of my strong suit and what I wanted to do in life. And that's kind of because I grew up so poor. I was really obsessed with money. So for a very long time, the only thing on my mind was money. How do I make more money? How do I support myself? How do I stop living a poor life? How do I actually get a car? And how do I actually like feed myself? And then, as I got older, how do I actually have a family and provide for my family and not be in the same position that my parents were in? So I think the most interesting story of all, though, about perseverance in general and how I actually got a job on Wall Street was this one. When I was a freshman in college, I started studying finance, and really that first 3 semesters, you don't really learn a whole lot. You learn a lot about business, you learn about maybe how business works and some concepts and like words that you have to like memorize, but you don't actually learn any hard skills. But then I had the opportunity to go to New York City, and I went to a networking event with lots of alumni. And all of these alumni were basically, there was like 30 or 40 of them, and they all worked on Wall Street, or they worked somewhere in New York City. We just call that Wall Street because anywhere in New York City in finance is basically kind of like Wall Street. This was my story. I wanted to get a job. I was super desperate. I had like $0 in my bank account, absolutely nothing, and I wanted to get a job. And a lot of people that I went to the networking event with were kind of older than me. They were either maybe sophomores, juniors, or seniors at my university, and I was a freshman. So I had my work really cut out for me, and I didn't really know what to expect, but I came in there with the goal of getting a job on Wall Street. And mind you, I didn't have a lot of experience. I just knew some terminology. I knew nothing about option trading. I basically didn't even have any finance classes at that point. I took just the intro to finance course, which was about time value of money and really simple basic concepts. And when I got to that networking event, I told myself I only have one shot at this. I either can get a job and try to get something for myself, or I'm just gonna leave here empty-handed. And I decided I'm gonna try to get something. So this was my plan. I went up to every single person at basically the networking event, right? Everyone was like drinking, everyone was having a good time. I decided to stay completely sober. Not that I drink now anyways. I don't drink at all, but I decided to stay completely sober and focus on one goal, to get a job. So I went up to every single person. And by the way, at the time, I actually already knew I wanted to be an option trader. It's kind of crazy, but the way that I knew I wanted to be an option trader was because I absolutely loved poker. I love the game of poker because you can take risk and you get reward. You have to really use your mind on a poker game. You play with other people, so you need a lot of psychology, you need a lot of mathematics, and you need a lot of game theory skills. And then when I was playing poker, I realized that some of the best hedge fund people and some of the best financiers are really good at poker. Like they win millions of dollars in poker tournaments. So I kind of thought to myself, if I like poker, then I would definitely like trading, and specifically option trading because it has the most specific examples of basically like poker concepts, because option trading is basically like a poker game. You're playing versus other people and you have to basically, again, use those mathematics skills. So I went up to every single person and I would ask them like, what do you do? And what is your role on Wall Street? And I wanted to ask them how much they make, but I know that is not a good concept or topic to talk about. So I was just basically like, because I didn't know anything about how much people make. I really knew nothing. I just wanted to make as much as possible because I was coming from that scarcity mindset. I was coming from this area of I'm really poor and I need to really make some money here. So, basically ask them what they do, what do they enjoy about their job. I try to listen to them as much as possible. And then every single person that I would talk to, I would ask them, is there a role or a job at your company that I could potentially intern for? Even if it's absolutely for free, I just really, really want to work somewhere and get some experience. And this went on and on. One person was an investment banker and he was like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Another person was a financial analyst. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Another guy was a financial advisor. He's like, I'd love to have you, but you need your Series 63 and your other licenses. I'm like, oh, okay, can't do that. And I kept going and going from person to person. It was 12 people, then it was 15 people, and I was starting to lose hope, and I was like, oh, maybe I won't get anything, but I am learning a lot here by asking people, what did they do for a living? Like, what do you do for a living? And do you like it? So I would ask them, and then I would be on person 25, and I was already like, oh, I'm not gonna get a job. But when I got to person 29, like literally the last person, there was one more person, right? There was about 30 people there. I got to the 29th person, and this person was an option trader. And I asked him, like, what do you do? He's like, I'm an option trader. I'm like, that's awesome. That's exactly what I wanna do. We ended up connecting really well. I guess it was fate, because when you have really good energy and you really wanna do something, that probably comes off, and other people can notice that. So I guess he noticed I was super passionate about option trading and that I was like super curious to learn. And I guess he thought that I would be a really good like employee. So he's like, sure, pass me over your resume and then I can, potentially put it to the hiring manager and we'll go from there. So anyways, after asking 29 people, long story short, I ended up getting that option trading job on Wall Street and my initial pay was $20 an hour. So it was about $800 a week. Now that was an enormous amount of money for me back then and my bank account was basically zero. So getting paid $800 a week was a lot of money. However, it is New York City and it was really expensive to live there. So I ended up actually commuting for 1.5 hours every single morning from somewhere far in Queens. I ended up having a roommate and then commuting to work every single morning at 6 a.m. I absolutely loved working. I learned a lot. However, that commute was really brutal. And actually what happened was I ended up learning so much about option trading and I was working on the New York Stock Exchange. So I was with these traders who were probably making, some of them were making like $13,000 a day. I would see that they would probably pull in between like $10,000 to $20,000, but also they would lose money sometimes. So I couldn't really add it up because I couldn't see their P&L sheets, but I would ask them all the time, like, how's your day? And they would say either I lost, 5 to 10,000 or I would make like 13 to 20,000. So I realized that if they're losing by about 5 to 10,000, but they're winning about 13 to 20,000, then even if that's like 50-50, then they're kind of making between $5 to $10,000 every 2 days. So in a single week and 5 days, they're probably pulling in about $15,000 or $20,000 for themselves, which I thought was absolutely crazy because just making $10,000 a month is a lot of money, but they were probably making like $70,000 or $80,000 a month. And one time I heard that this trader made $150,000 on one trade. And I was like, gosh, if you can make that much money on one trade, then in my mind, I started thinking about yachts and Lamborghinis. And I was like, what do I need to do to make this happen? Well, over 3 months, I got to learn a lot, but I never really had an opportunity to trade myself since you need licenses and you also need to use other people's money and they would just not give an intern any money. So after 3 months, I realized that I wasn't really gonna move any further and I already learned what I wanted to learn. Plus I had a really crazy situation back in like New York in my apartment. Had a really, really crazy situation. I don't know, if you wanna know about that, just comment below. I won't waste any time there, but it was a really crazy situation. So I kind of wanted to leave New York City and I also learned everything that I wanted to. So I decided to go back to college. And long story short, I kept studying, kept working my ass off, and I knew that option trading was exactly what I wanted to do. So I kept putting my mind towards option trading and becoming a trader. I later on got a job opportunity at Goldman Sachs in Los Angeles. I got to learn a lot about financial advising and I worked in the private wealth management department. I got to learn so many things there, see so many celebrity portfolios. However, again, after about 3 to 4 months, I already knew everything. I kind of took all the knowledge that I wanted to. There was a few things that I really enjoyed, like research. I really got a lot of hands-on research experience because they had this little portal where you can read all these research reports. And to me, that was like the most interesting part of working there. It wasn't actually the work itself, it was the research that I got to do. And specifically, I wanted to do option trading. So I started to do research that they had internally about option trading. And I got as much exposure as I possibly could with clients. I tried to work really hard, but to be honest, at the end of the day, I didn't really find financial advising that interesting. I also realized that a lot of clients were paying really huge fees. I mean, they were getting charged like 1%, and some of these people would have like $100 million. So they were getting charged $1 million a year in fees. And honestly, when I looked at the portfolio, I was kind of thinking thinking to myself, this portfolio isn't that complex. In fact, a lot of that portfolio is just index funds. And to be honest, I do understand that really rich people want to just preserve their wealth. They're not necessarily looking to grow it. But me, myself, coming from a very poor background and having to start with basically no money and then putting in like a few $1,000s, I wanted to grow my option portfolio from scratch. I didn't have $100 million or $1 million. My parents didn't have any money. There was no way for me to get access to capital. So for me, I was more interested in growing a small portfolio. So that's really all I focused on. So I learned a lot there, and I'm going to specifically talk about one research study that completely changed my life. But first, I just want to wrap up with my college education. I ended up getting a degree in finance, analytics, accounting, and economics. So I got 4 different degrees. I quite didn't finish a couple of them by credits, but I basically took more courses during my 5 years than someone would take in their master's degree. I just kept taking the maximum load. I kept overfilling myself with all these courses because I thought that learning more would make me more money. And I was sort of right, but not exactly. What actually taught me a lot was my last internship. I ended up working for PNC Capital Advisors in Philadelphia, and they were basically a hedge fund. They had about $7 to $9 billion. I don't exactly remember the amount at this point, but the head person there actually graduated my university with a complete 4.0 GPA. He's never even gotten an A-. So the guy was a genius, and he built a quantitative model. Now, this quantitative model had many, many different factors, and the different factor is basically looking at earnings per share and then how much a stock is growing, and basically other different factors like price to sales and price to earnings and so many different financial ratios and how the momentum of a stock is changing. And basically, they were stock pickers. They weren't option traders. However, I had a lot of option trading knowledge, but I wanted to learn more about stock picking because, of course, if I can pick the right stock, then I can pick an even better option. So I ended up actually working there for about 5 months, and I was crazy about trading. I learned so much there about quantitative analysis. And finally, as I graduated college, I honestly didn't feel like any finance job could better me anymore because working at Goldman Sachs, I got lots of research experience. Working at the PNC Capital Advisors, I got so much experience on quantitative analysis, and my first internship was all about option trading. So I already felt like exactly what I wanted in life. I've already gotten that knowledge and experience. So when I ended up leaving college, I ended up just taking the highest job that I can get, which was a job at IBM as a technology consultant. And I think I got paid like $75,000 plus a little bit of a bonus. So maybe I was making around $85,000. And what I wanted to do, I only had one goal, is to work for myself, because to be honest, I've gotten fired from many, many little jobs in between. I did sales for a little bit, which I wasn't that great at, and I got fired from that job. I've tried so many other little things that I dabbled in, and honestly, none of them were for me. And I also never really liked having a boss. I really, really hated coming to work on time. I really hated someone telling me what to do. I really hated following all these rules. I just wanted to be an option trader for myself, and I knew that I needed to build up the capital. So when I ended up graduating college, I was really fortunate. I had about $50,000 saved. So my only goal was to actually get to 6 figures and then basically do option trading full time and live as cheap as possible, because I knew that I can live pretty low since I grew up poor and I didn't have much. I knew I can live a pretty cheap life and just trade options and live on that and not have to really report to anyone. So what I ended up doing my first year, I just worked my butt off at IBM. I got lots of experience, but every single day I would just trade options and I would focus on selling put options and put credit spreads. And this is when the good times started rolling in, like it was 2019. So I did really well in 2019. And then in 2020, I really focused on put credit spreads. So I started selling put credit spreads specifically on Tesla. I caught Tesla very early. So call it luck, call it knowledge, call it experience. I don't know. It was a combination of everything. I prepared myself. I had the knowledge coming into 2020 to do put credit spreads properly, which is, by the way, there's a really special link in the description. I'm going to have a 1-day event on put selling and put credit spreads on exactly what I learned from Goldman Sachs. It's just going to be a 4-hour event where we're going to talk about the most important thing ever for growing a small portfolio. This is what took me from $50,000. Basically, I went from $7,000 to $50,000 trading options as well, but I was buying lots of call options. It was not consistent. It took me a really long time. But once I started to understand how to do put credit spreads on specific stocks like Tesla and other implied volatility stocks that have really, good premiums, that have high implied volatility, I went from 50,000 to like 700,000 in just a year. Then the following year, I went from 700,000 to over 1.5 million. So I went 10x and then I went to a double. So it was a really, really huge gain. So the 10x happened in 2020. And then in 2021, I actually had a 59% return. So I was around 700, 800,000. Then I ended up ending the year around like 1.3, 1.4 million, something like that. But I know the actual return was 59%. And the year before that, it was probably like an 11, 12x return. And basically that return did come from Tesla. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. It did come from Tesla. However, what I did was put credit spreads on Tesla. So I was selling put credit spreads consistently, and as Tesla would rise, I would basically collect like insane amounts of premium on a weekly basis, like 3 to 5%. So 3 to 5%, I would get like 20% returns a month. And as that compounds, it's really, really easy to grow. And honestly, I didn't do the best job at risk management. I didn't properly diversify myself. I was a little bit crazy. I was seeing how much money I was making, and I really wasn't protecting myself as much as I should have. Luckily, it did go in my favor, and it did end up working out. I did do some put credit spreads on Apple and Amazon. I caught NEO very early. I caught NEO like $4 per share in 2020, like mid 2020. I was making videos on NEO and Palantir and all these stocks that were rising a lot. And I ended up taking profits properly. Obviously, I showed those profits in Discord. I have a full Excel sheet for everyone to look at when I bought and sold every single stock. I place every single trade live when I do that. But I ended up doing really well, and that's from selling puts and put credit spreads. Those are my two favorite trades, which is exactly why in the description you will see that I'm making a live event basically online where over 4 hours I'm going to teach you everything about just these two strategies. In option trading in general, there's a lot of good things that you can do, but these two strategies really helped me grow from basically 50K up to over $1 million. And that took a while. It took about 2 years, but if you think about it, I beat the S&P 500 by like multiple times using a safe strategy and not really risking too much of my capital. So although I did use Tesla, I would diversify my strikes, and I would also diversify my expiration date. So it was risky, but not as risky because I was still diversifying, because I learned all these different strategies. But I also learned that millionaires and billionaires, what they do when they have large positions is they manage those positions very well. Because if you think about it, most people get rich off of one thing. Specifically a CEO, like let's say the CEO of a gaming company will get rich based on his stock. So he's gonna have millions and millions of dollars because that CEO gets compensated in stock at his company, and probably he has a huge investment like 10 to $50 million. So they have to become experts at managing one stock and really understanding on a deep fundamental level and technical level what they are holding. And I basically kind of became like an executive at Tesla because all I did was invest in Tesla, but I understood the technical analysis extremely well. That's exactly what I'm going to be covering in my 1-day live event. And registration is open now, and registration is going to be closing in about a week. That event is going to happen on October 1st on Saturday. We're going to record that event. I'm super excited to teach exactly what helped me grow my portfolio consistently without risking too much capital and really growing my portfolio from a small amount initially. And of course, later on, I used a strategy when I hit 50K, but I wish I had used this strategy before I had 50K. I would have totally killed it even if I had like 5 grand to my name. This research that I stumbled on actually came from Goldman Sachs. I learned a lot about delta. I learned a lot about hedging. I learned a lot about implied volatility. I learned a lot about entry and exit, which is the most important thing. Too many people will enter a stock at a very expensive point and then it'll go down on them. Or they can enter the stock properly, and when it rides up, they don't know when to close. They have no idea when to take profits. They end up getting greedy and thinking that that stock or that option is going to go to the moon. That's just not how it works. You need to have rules, plans, and you need to understand analysis before you get into every position if you want to squeeze out the most profit. And specifically, I've seen so many traders on Wall Street, they will have like a 7% gain, and then they will look at the analysis and they'll think, oh, this thing can go up more. But they don't have a plan even going in. They're professional traders, and then they end up having the 7% profit go down to like 2% or 1%. They end up panicking, and by the time they sell it, they literally only squeezed out like 1%. So that difference is like 6%. Even if you have like $10,000, that's $600 worth of profit that you could be doing better on if you become better mentally, if you become better with analysis, and basically if you become better on the fundamental side of your stock analysis. So anyways, that's my journey to becoming really stable financially, growing a 7-figure portfolio, being able to travel. That's why my background keeps changing. And I want to let you know that that 1-day event is going to be a one-time event. It's going to be October 1st. You can look at that event in the description. I'm super excited. It's going to be a really affordable event that we can basically connect, and I'm going to have a really specific agenda for about 4 hours teaching you exactly selling puts and put credit spreads to grow a small portfolio without risking too much of your capital and without risking any losses. Thank you so much for watching. I love having you as a subscriber, and I'll see you in the next video, and hopefully I'll see you on October 1st.